In recent years, Kia has defied conventional wisdom, and instead of shrinking their lineup, they in a way have grown it and maybe even have gone a bit too far, stretching themselves quite thin. They have EVs, hybrids, they have small cars, they have large SUVs. But in a time when most manufacturers are dropping their sedans, both small and mid-size, Kia is staying committed to this market once again for another generation. If you're joining me for my K4 review, you might find the K5 even more appealing. In today's video, we're going to check out what the 2026 K5 has to offer. We're going to check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a quick test drive, and see why, if you are in the market for a fun daily driver that also feels somewhat luxurious and you don't want to break the bank, then maybe taking a look at the 2026 Kia K5 might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and a thank you to Gervais Kia in Lowell, Massachusetts for letting me come down here to check out the Kia K5. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Kia inventory. Before we dive into what's powering the K5 GT line, let's begin with pricing. For the 2026 Kia K5 GT line, you're looking at a starting cost of just over $28,000 if you go with front-wheel drive. An all-wheel drive version is going to be about $1,600 more. And on top of all of this, we do have optional packages and equipment for the interior, giving us a grand total of right around $33,000. Now, pricing alone makes me question whether you should just go with the GT with the better performance, better powertrain, and a more exhilarating driving experience. But if all-wheel drive is a must-have out of your next daily driver and sedan, well, the GT line is really your only option here in the lineup for 2026. Now, also pricing-wise, this is going to be very competitive with that Camry, with that Nissan Altima, and Honda Accord. And just keep in mind that some of these sedans don't offer that all-wheel drive, so that might be a competitive advantage for the K5. But powering our model today is going to be a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine, producing 191 horsepower and 181 pound-feet of torque. It is paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission. Power output for the price point is very similar to most rivals in this segment. The key difference, though, is that you're not going to have a CVT. So if you are comparing this to a Honda Accord or Nissan Altima, for example, this might feel a bit quicker in a straight line, relatively speaking, for a vehicle at around $30,000. If you are cross-shopping this with the Kia K4, like we had featured a couple of days ago, the K4 has an IVT, and it's going to feel a lot more slower and lethargic unless you go with the GT line turbo, which comes in at around $30,000. So at 30 grand with the K5 GT line, I think you're getting a better bang for your buck, but that's just my take here. In regards to fuel economy, you're looking at right around 24 miles per gallon in the city and 33 miles per gallon on the highway if you go with all-wheel drive, which isn't too far off a lot of vehicles in this segment. But it has to come back to pricing, though, because at $33,000 for our model, you could just go with the GT. And with the GT, you have a 2.5-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine, producing 290 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque, and it is going to be paired with an 8-speed dual-clutch automatic. And when you factor in the revisions to the chassis and the suspension, that might be a better choice if you are an enthusiast. But it's all going to come down to what you're looking for out of your next sedan. If you want all-wheel drive, go with the GT line, but if you're looking for something a bit more sporty, the GT might be speaking to you in more ways than one. However, if you do choose the GT line over the GT, you're not missing out on too much aesthetically, aside from some minor design aspects, like the neon green accents for the brake calipers and also the quad exhaust tips. But if you can live without those features, you're going to like what you have here with the GT line. Up front, you are going to receive full LED headlights and LED fog lights for better visibility at night or in adverse weather conditions. With those daytime running lights, they are going to be in that amber color for a sinister appearance. For me, though, with the GT styling, you are going to have that mesh grille design for the top and bottom, looking very good on this car. And also, I like the striking body lines for the lower portion of that front bumper. This is a good looking car from far away, and for a sedan at around $30,000, I think it does have an appearance that draws a lot of attention on the roadways. Then as you make your way over to the side profile, you are going to have those 18-inch alloy wheels, which I think look really nice on this sedan. Now, for a model with a brighter color, you are going to have a bit more of a two-tone design, which I think would make this car look very low profile. We are going to talk about the ride quality and road noise later on in this video when we take the K5 out for a quick test drive. But at least aesthetically speaking, I think they look quite nice. Now again, if you do go with the GT, you will have that lime green look to the brake calipers, and that might be a way to go if you are an enthusiast. Now with the GT line, you are going to have gloss black side mirror caps with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. And then finally, as you make your way around to the back here with the Kia K5, the first thing of note is going to be that sportback rear fascia and sloping roofline, kind of reminding me of the Kia Stinger. Now this car does replace the Optima, and the Stinger was dropped with no successor, but with the K5 I feel like it's trying to appease both markets and both consumers in that way. You can have the chrome accents that make their way around the rear window, which is quite unique in this segment. And then best of all, you are going to have full LED taillights. So a nice full LED light setup for the exterior of this car, giving you that modern look. Then for the lower portion of the rear bumper, you will have some brushed aluminum accents. If you go with the GT, you have quad exhaust tips, but I think even for the GT line, this is one good looking sedan. Hopping inside the 2026 Kia K5 GT line, you're greeted by, in my opinion, a very Euro-like interior. Kia is one of those manufacturers that can go in two different directions. They can mimic Honda, Toyota, and Nissan, or they can try being a more cheaper Audi and BMW, which they have hired executives from those two brands in the past, and a lot of their inputs and imprints over the past, I'd say 10 years, has kind of made its way into another generation in the 2020s. And you still see that with the red Syntex seats, which are optional for the K5 GT line, which in my opinion gives us a sporty feel and also a unique aspect to the interior and driving environment. It also helps out with the dashboard layout as well, with the full digital gauge cluster and infotainment system. But before we dive into all of this though, we have to discuss one optional package which I think really elevates the sedan in its segment. So for $2,200 for the GT line premium package, you're going to receive a panoramic sunroof with a power sunshade, bringing in a lot of natural light to the interior, LED interior lighting, the Bose premium audio system with 12 speakers to amplify the audio of your favorite music, active sound design, and then also the unique 18-inch alloy wheels in a gloss black finish, which I think is a nice touch for this vehicle as we checked out with the exterior, and it would give you a two-tone look on those brighter colors like I talked about before. But for $2,200, I would say this is a must-have, even though you are creeping towards the GT pricing in the lineup. Now, getting back to these seats, you are going to have a power adjustable driver seat, whereas the passenger will have to manually find their ideal seating position. They're also heated as well. The Syntex upholstery does feel quite premium, and there's a lot of bolstering and support to these seats, letting you know that the K5 should be sports tuned. We'll find out later on during the test drive. But initial impressions wise, I really like what the K5 is giving us here. It is unique, and also, in my mind, at least aesthetically, this is a step above what we have seen from other manufacturers in this market. In front of you will be a leather-wrapped steering wheel, which is flat-bottomed, by the way, which feels really nice in the hands. Aggressive 10-2 and firm 9-3 grips, but sadly, no paddle shift as you rotate the gears yourself. I am a bit surprised by that with the 8-speed automatic we have here today, paired with the 4-cylinder. Now, technology-wise, this is the exact same layout we have seen in the Sportage and the EV6 and EV9. So we're not going to take a deep dive into this today, but I do think you're going to like what you have here at your fingertips. So by using the buttons on the steering wheel, you can scroll through a variety of information, such as your fuel economy statistics, your tire pressure monitoring, also your torque distribution as well. You'll have turn-by-turn navigation and your onboard compass, and you have a layout that helps you access your safety systems as well. Very straightforward here. Will also be displayed here on your digital gauge cluster will be your drive mode selector. So from here, you can scroll through normal, sport, my drive, and snow. That dial will be found on the center console. So keep in mind here, if you're looking for a car that can take on the elements, going with the all-wheel drive system definitely has its benefits. Now, taking a look at the infotainment system, you are going to have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation, and you will have a wireless phone charging pad found on the center console. From here, it's very straightforward, similar to what we have experienced with that Sportage, with that EV6 and EV9. You can have all your widgets in place, well within arm's reach for your phone projection, voice memo, weather, sports, valet mode, and setup. When you do press down on setup though, Now you have more sub-menus to scroll through. It's right here, though, where it might be a bit more confusing, a bit more in-depth. But I do think compared to last generation, this technology is definitely higher quality. The resolution is really good. And this is going to be a bit more of an immersive experience compared to, say, what you're going to find out of Honda and Toyota right now. One thing that I will say, though, here with the K5 is that you're still forced to reach for the head unit or the touch-sensitive icons on the dashboard, which I would love to see Kia give us more physical buttons on the center console or a dial to help us control this infotainment system. But you're not going to have that here in most vehicles at around $30,000. When placing the K5 in reverse, you are going to receive a rear backup camera with trajectory. Resolution and quality is really nice here, like I have seen in other Kia products. You have a multi-angle rear view as well, giving you a 180-degree view, and then also you will have what I call a bumper cam. So when you are backing out tight spots on a city street, you're not going to be hitting that car behind you. Also, a good amount of visibility here with the K5. Continuing on, beneath the head unit, you're going to have what I think is really neat here. So you're going to notice a triangle icon and a fan icon. If the triangle icon is highlighted, you're going to have quick access icons for the infotainment system for home, map, search, seek and track, media, and setup, and your dials will be used for the volume and tuning. But if you press the fan icon, now you have your dual zone climate control settings, your AC, front and rear defrosters, fan speed and fan direction, and then your dials control the dual zone climate control, which I think is really nice. It's a great way to maximize the space on the dashboard. Some people might find this confusing. I think it's kind of neat here in an age when most of these features are placed on the head unit. Beneath that, though, you will find two USB-C inputs and a 12-volt outlet to go along with that wireless phone charging pad, and there will be another cubby for an additional smartphone or wallet. For the center console itself, you're going to have your traditional gear shifter here, which is flanked by gloss black trim, typical for a sports sedan in this market. You can have two cup holders. Then next to that will be physical buttons for your park assist features, your auto vehicle hold, electronic parking brake, and also your camera systems. Then closer towards you will be your switches for your 3-level heated seats for both the driver and passenger, and then you have your heated steering wheel. That is right. And then lastly will be your drive mode selector. So everything for that is within arm's reach. I'd just love to see the infotainment system have that same functionality. You're going to find a cubby for your key fob, and then for the center storage compartment, there is enough room for some smaller items, maybe a couple smartphones, wallets, or other small tech gadgets, but it's not super deep here like we have seen from, say, crossovers at around $30,000. Then to round out the front seating area, above will be that panoramic moonroof, which brings in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now for passengers in the second row, the Euro vibes just continue on here, not only with the interior color that we have here for the K5, but it's the sloping roofline, the Sportback design. Also, these seats do sit a little lower to the ground to maximize that headroom. And lastly will be the aggressive center hump, giving you a Grand Tourer-like feel. The K5 most certainly lives up to the GT badge here. Unfortunately, with that, though, I think it's going to be quite the squeeze trying to fit a third person in the center. Although if you are just going to have two people back here, they are going to be very comfortable because there's a good amount of shoulder room. And even though legroom isn't going to be class leading, there is plenty of that too. You're looking at around 35 inches of legroom, which surprisingly isn't going to outclass the Honda Accord, the Toyota Camry, or even the Nissan Altima. But I think this is more than enough for people who are having growing families that are going to have smaller adults sit in the back. This is most certainly conducive. I don't feel cramped sitting back here. This seat is adjusted most of the way back, and I'm pretty impressed with the overall comfort as well. The Syntec seats most certainly do the job here. They're plush. They're also supportive for the second row. This is great to see. Also, even with that lower roofline, the Sportback rear fascia, I don't think you'll be hitting your head on the headliner if you are quite tall. So this is a big plus here for the K5. Also, I love the soft touch points on the door panels as well. It lets me know that Kia is focusing on a higher quality product here at around 30 grand. Now, sadly though, and I'm a bit surprised by this, you're not going to have two center mounted air vents. However, you are going to have two USB-C inputs, so at least we can charge up our smartphones back here. And lastly, you will have a center armrest with two cup holders. And returning to the rear fascia one more time to take a look at the rear cargo area for 2026 with the K5. There is going to be the small button here on the trunk. and once you press down on it, it opens nice and wide. Now inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 15.5 cubic feet of room, which is quite standard in this market. Sure, it's not going to be a class leader, but this is going to be more than enough for weekly tasks and weekend getaways. You can easily store 8, 9, 10 bags of luggage back here. In fact, I have 3 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, and there is a lot more room to work with. So if you are using this for a road trip vehicle, I think it's going to be more than conducive for that, especially with it being a sedan. On top of this, though, you are going to have a spare tire. So if you encounter a flat on those road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. Now, obviously, you can lower the second row seats to maximize that cargo space. But for this price point at around $33,000 for our model today, you might be better off going with a Sportage if practicality is going to be that #1 priority for your next daily driver. Despite my initial impressions towards the K5 GT line for the interior, with its Euro-like styling for the dashboard layout, technology, and even fit and finish, unfortunately, the driving experience leaves a lot more to be desired. For a sedan wearing the GT line badge, I'm expecting more connectivity to the road. I'm expecting a heavier steering input. I'm expecting to feel a bit more connected to the chassis, and that just isn't the case. With the seating position, you feel like you're sitting on top of the chassis rather than being a part of it. Even in sport mode, this car doesn't feel that agile or nimble in the corners, and it just feels too mainstream for me. Now, that is not a bad thing at all. That's not a major takeaway. If you're someone who is on page with what I'm saying here, you might have to look elsewhere. But if you're someone looking for a sedan that feels comfortable, that feels somewhat luxurious, and has a lot of interior features, you're going to like the K5 GT line. You're going to like the fact you have this ability to go with a red interior. You're going to love the technology. You're going to love the dashboard layout. But if you're someone who is focusing on the driving experience, that's where you are going to be let down, much like I am today, because I feel as though I'm going to have to go with the GT. I'm going to have to go with the car that has the sport tune suspension, that has a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, that is going to give me the best overall driving experience and value here. But if you're someone looking for an all-wheel drive sedan, you want a car that feels very well put together, that feels luxury-like, you're going to like the GT line. You're going to like this car. It feels very well refined. There is some sense of rigidity to this platform. And that to me is the selling point. That to me is the strong point for this car. And I have to look at those positives to kind of outweigh the negatives here for the GT line, especially for a model coming in at $33,000. Now, I do like the fact that this car is rather quiet. The fact the interior insulation is really good. The 18-inch alloy wheels don't create that much road noise when you are cruising around in the city and suburbs. And also, there's not too much harshness to the ride quality here, since we don't have a sport tune suspension, but also the 18-inch wheels don't really create any issues when you are taking on the bumps and imperfection. It doesn't make its way to the interior, which I can be very appreciative of with this sedan. This powertrain is very docile and quiet. The 8-speed automatic transmission does do a pretty good job with the gear shifts, although I do think the dual clutch would be better with the GT. But it does exactly what you're looking for. It's decently sized, it's practical, it's comfortable, and it's not going to break the bank. I also think it is a better choice over the K4. And then within the K5 lineup, this is mostly a no-brainer to go with the GT line over the LXS. The fact you have the all-wheel drive at your disposal might be the game changer here in this market if you don't want to buy a crossover. But the negatives for me, though, is just the fact that there is no feedback with the steering input. There is no soul necessarily. And I feel like Kia may have left all that out for the GT, to let the GT shine in its own way. And again, when it comes back to that pricing, like I talked about before, I think the GT might be the better choice. So let's get on the highway here and see what the K5 is capable of. Unfortunately, we had the slowest driver in Massachusetts in front of us, so we can't check out what the handling and cornering is like when we are getting on the highway here. But we will have the ability to pass the slower driver for sure. Not too bad. Power and torque kick in right around mid-range, and you can pass slower drivers. with this 2.5. But I do think, though, going with the turbocharged 4-cylinder engine would be the better choice. Now, at highway speeds at around 70 miles an hour, ride quality is pretty good here. You're not hearing a lot of the outside world enter the cabin, even with the 18-inch alloy wheels. It has nice composure on the roadways. And like I said before, it has this smoothness to it. It has this ride quality that I think a lot of you are going to be impressed by. Best of all, with this 8-speed automatic, you don't have that droning either, so you have a bit more confidence when you are entering highways or when you do need to get on throttle. But all in all, after this very quick test drive with the K5 GT line, my final thoughts are going to be this, that if you are an enthusiast, if you are someone looking for a lot of power, go with the GT. That is going to be the best choice for 2026. But if you're solely looking for a well put together sedan that feels upscale at around $33,000, that has the technology that you demand, also has a good amount of features and amenities, you are definitely going to like the K5 for 2026. You're going to like this car compared to some of its closest rivals. I think it can hold its own. I don't necessarily think it's the best in its class, but I do like what the K5 is giving us here. The fact that it feels somewhat Euro-like is going to really appease some buyers looking for something just a bit more than a point A to point B vehicle. This car does have a fun factor to it without the CVT. And best of all, it's not going to break the bank. It's not going to be overly expensive. And with all that being said, this is a good car. It's actually a great car. But just with the GT line though, make sure that when you hop inside for the first time, you don't have those high expectations like I did. I think you're going to need to go with that GT. You're going to need to have a car that feels fun and engaging. But as a point A to point B vehicle though, I think the K5 most certainly is on par with many midsize sedans in this segment. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2026 Kia K5 GT line. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.